am a firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump.
I'm Tyler Covington. I create common sense news content. I help the news make sense for both sides of the aisle. Let's go.
So the only thing that you're not going to like talking about, we'll talk about first. I'm watching CPAC, and they put up a poll of potential, next generation, right? Post-Trump. You are second on the list after the VP as people getting the nod at CPAC to be president. A lot of people were surprised by this. My first question, you have anything to do with putting your name in that list because you have presidential ambitions?
No. And President Trump, I'm a firm believer that President Trump will run and win again in 2028. So I've already endorsed President Trump. A man like this comes along once every century if we're lucky. We've got him now. He's on fire, and I'm a huge supporter. Want to see him again in 2028.
And obviously, anybody who doesn't like...
Whoa. That was a lot to take in. He thinks Trump's going to come in again, 2028. All right, let's back up. Let's see.
Obviously, anybody who doesn't like what you say but judges it as a function of a lack of intelligence doesn't know anything about you. I don't make that mistake. You're a smart guy. He's term limited. How do you think he gets another term?
We're working on it. I think we'll have a couple of alternatives. Let's say that. We'll see. We'll see what the definition. We'll see what the definition of term limit is.
All right. Well, so you're talking about litigating this issue because I don't want people to listen to our interview and say Bannon's cooking up an insurrection. Bannon is cooking up. You know what I mean? I want people to get a straight take on.
Now, if you don't know who Steve Bannon is, this is not the first time that you've heard him in the news for saying something extreme. However, let's take a listen and see what he has to say.
What are you suggesting?
Chris, as you know, I've had greater long shots than this. When we supported President Trump after the election, we said that day in our podcast and doubled down, having President Trump's back, that he was coming back not just to win the primary, he would win the White House, and we had to get organized and drive that victory, and also start working on all the policies, what's called Project 2025 or the America First Policy Institute, but all those different think tanks that started putting in the policies that you're seeing today in what we call Flood the Zone or Days of Thunder or however you want to describe it. But this is many years in the making. So we've had greater long shots than Trump 2028, and we've got a lot of stuff we're working on there. We're not prepared to talk about it publicly, but in a couple of months, I think we will be.
Now, it's important that while you're watching this, it's important to understand, just like every presidential team campaign term, there's many coalition or groups of parties within a supporting cast. That doesn't mean just because Steve Bannon says, hey, I think Trump should somehow run for a third term, which we will get to that here in a bit. But he thinks Trump will run for a third term. Doesn't mean that everybody in his party, or even that Trump himself thinks he's running for a third term, including, he mentioned Project 2025, which Trump disavowed during the campaign term, according to his words that he has nothing to do or has never read Project 2025. So we do need to take it for a grain of salt of what the entire Republican Party or MAGA party says.
But you are not suggesting revolution or overthrow or anything that people would condemn.
Chris, we just won one of the biggest sweeping victories. We're in the middle of a 1932 type realignment if we can continue on and continue to have populist policies, populist nationalist policies. We have African American men coming to our side. We have Hispanics coming to our side. So no, we're huge believers in democracy because we know how to get votes out. We know how to get low propensity, low information voters out to support the president's policies. The anti-democratic forces, I think you're seeing them today in the courts. I mean, they're trying to obstruct a sitting president of the United States from fulfilling his executive mandate. So no, we're the big believers in democracy, and we show it because we won this unbelievable come from behind, not just in 2016, as you know, but in 2024 when virtually everybody ruled Trump out.
So I think he's trying to show, hey, the Republican Party obviously had a huge bump of support from its previous election terms in 2016, 2020, going back, I think 20 years, they hadn't had this big of a turnaround. So he's trying to say, hey, because we had such a big bump and turnaround with this new presidential term of this campaign, then we somehow need to make Trump, who will be several years older at that point, and he won't be allowed to even run. We should have him run for the next election cycle to use the momentum that we've already gained during this past one.
There's no question about that. And in 2024, people did not see him making the kind of comeback that he did. And that is certainly a historical comeback, no question. But I just wanted to make it clear for people so that they can't paint you as, suggesting revolution. Your analogy is to 32 and how FDR extended it. The Constitution probably gets in the way.
But I firmly believe in the revolution you're seeing going on now, the revolution of common sense to deconstruct the administrative state. You're seeing that battle and that combat politically and legally in federal courts every second, every day. And if your audience, I know they love you, but they ought to start paying attention to also this greater arc of this massive fight that's going on for the direction of this republic.
Bottom line, the United States president cannot serve 3 terms. There has been one president who has served 4 terms, but they are no longer allowed to serve more than 2 terms. We'll get straight into it. Here's a couple of facts about the 2 terms. So going back to our first president, George Washington served 2 terms. There wasn't a term limit. He could have served more than 2 terms, but he famously recommended that every president only serve a max of 2 terms. Skip forward, we have FDR, Franklin D. Roosevelt in the 1930s. FDR served 4 terms, a Democrat president. He served 4 terms. During his 4th term, he actually passed away. And then Congress made an amendment in 1951, this 22nd Amendment, that said that presidents from this point on, for all future generations, that they can only serve a max of 2 terms. Now, there is an exception for partial terms extensions. If you're a vice president and you were serving and then you took over your predecessor's term and it was less than 2 years, you could serve another 2 more terms. So you could have 2 terms plus the less than 2 years terms that you served when you became president during your vice presidential term. But if it was more than 2 years, so the president passes away and as a vice president you served 3 years during that term, you could only have 1 more election term as president. So that'd be 1 term as president plus another 3 years as president when you took over for your predecessor. So all respect to Steve Bannon, as everyone in the United States deserves respect. President Trump will not serve more than 2 terms. And President Trump hasn't even expressed that he wants to serve more than 2 terms, but even if he did want to, it's not going to happen. The Constitution does not allow it. The Supreme Court wouldn't allow it. The Congress wouldn't allow it. It would not happen. It's not going to happen. That's the breakdown. If you want to see more of this kind of content, go ahead, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know your opinion. I'll see you next time.